Hello everyone, thank you Ravi. I'm actually here with you today as Farmer Becky, and I am going to share with you a model for how to communicate value and values in order to attract investment in urban agriculture. Specifically, I'm going to tell you about a form of fundraising called crowdfunding. So my interest began because I have a pain point. I don't like waste. That's been a big driver in my career in sustainability. I'm always trying to seek efficiency in things. And this is a waste of space. It might look like a nice lawn, but it's not really doing anything. It could be forest and habitat. It could be a garden growing food for that neighborhood. It could be a number of other things. But to be honest, yards are underutilized. Don't get me wrong, I like a park that has athletic fields and other things, but in suburbia and other developed areas, there's a lot of unused yard space. So before I moved to Keene for this program, I lived in the Boston area. And it's relatively densely developed. Sometimes I would go to places called co-working spaces, like this one, Work Bar. And what intrigued me were two things. One was the efficient use of space. Often an individual who's either a startup owner or just someone who wants a sense of community will go there to get their work done. They have accountability, but they also have shared resources like meeting rooms and special phones and projectors and other equipment that they share. It's pretty efficient instead of, if you're someone who travels a lot, having an empty office half of the time. It's a great use of space. One of the things that bothered me, though, is looking out the window from this space. I saw a lot of empty rooftops. So despite being a city and densely developed, there's still room to grow. And what could we grow there? Maybe food. So as I thought about these ideas of more efficient use of space and food production, this past fall, I looked into a concept called the sharing economy. And as part of that, I I perused two books called What's Mine is Yours by Rachel Botsman, and this other book called Food Not Lawns. It's actually a book in the library here by Heather Flores. And in both of them, I learned about a form of urban agriculture called yardsharing. And this was really intriguing to me because it's a collaborative agreement between a property owner and someone who has gardening skills to basically rent their land or their yard for free to grow food on. It's a really efficient way to have agriculture in a city where there's not typically a lot of land, kind of distributed food production. And some people are connecting those who have and those who want to garden through these basically dating sites online where they describe what their scenario is and what their interests in gardening are. And maybe they'll get some of the harvest in return for this agreement. It's really interesting. And I thought, well, isn't this a good way to have more local food consumption and to reduce our impacts on climate change and be more responsible? Even though population growth has slowed, we still have really inequitable distribution of food and access to it. There's not enough just sustainability to have access to healthy food, and we're having increasing disparities as some places flood and some places drought. Broccoli is going up to $7 a head in New England. We can't rely on California. How are we going to grow more food in cities, for example? So is this just a dream? This would be a very utopian vision for a city. And it's actually, I don't even know who the source is, but one of our MBA classmates, Jake Elliott, shared it with us this past semester. And it really intrigued a number of us, including some of us in the room right now. And besides being very colorful and energetic, it shows renewable energy and closed loop systems. It's something that captivates us. I actually don't think it's just a dream. I think that food security is very accessible to us now. So in addition to looking into yard sharing this past fall, I started to look into urban farming. Now there's a bit of a difference to tell you about. Gardening, you tend to have one-on-one relationships with either your yard or someone else in their yard, and you grow food, and that's that. With farming, you're growing excess or surplus, and it's scaling up the food system and improving our sustainability overall. This project was done by New Urban Farmers in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. They have a geodesic greenhouse with aquaponics growing fish and plants. The fish feed off of the plants, and their waste acts as fertilizer for the plants, and the people eat the plants, and so on. Another beauty of it is that it's an extended growing season. We grow local food year-round when we have use of spaces like this. And that's one of the challenges of living in the Northeast, for example. So New Urban Farmers funded their project through crowdfunding. And I'll talk about that more in a minute. But I want to point out two other things that are interesting about this. They're also making use of vacant space. This is an idle lot in a housing community that otherwise would be sitting there without a happy kid in the middle of it, probably. They also, besides providing a somewhat closed-loop system with the greenhouses, were able to use crowdfunding money to invest in solar energy. So they're also going off the grid and becoming more self-sufficient in that way. So to tell you a little bit about crowdfunding, it's typically donation-based. A large number of people will contribute small amounts of funds to a project that has a strong story that intrigues them and they want to support it. Maybe it's just friends and family who are providing angel investment and don't have any expectations of return on their investment. Maybe it's people in the neighborhood who want to see a blighted area revitalized. Crowdfunding has been growing as a way of matchmaking resources to projects. So when I compared yard sharing and urban farming, I decided to pursue the route of urban farming for my research in the spring because the peer-to-peer, one-on-one relationship of yard sharing seemed a bit less efficient to me. It wasn't helping to scale up the system the way that sharing equipment at a larger scale for urban farming was. In addition, the ability for crowdfunding to support urban farms and build community as a result was something that these one-on-one yard sharing relationships did not create. So a few months ago, my sister forwarded me an email from a company called Green City Growers. They were seeking to do a crowdfunding campaign. They wanted to publish a book called The Urban Bounty about how to grow food anywhere. And as I looked at their website and at their crowdfunding campaign site, they used Kickstarter. I noticed that their communications were really, really strong. They talked about value and values. They talked about food access, food literacy, educating kids about how to grow fresh food, convenience, taste, and nutrition levels. When you shorten the supply chain between farm and plate, you have higher nutrient retention in food. There are a lot of great things going on around this one meta value of food. In addition, they were able to exceed their fundraising goal. This is a screenshot of their Kickstarter campaign. They were able to exceed it through the support of 149 backers, and they were given 30 days to do this, and that's a typical window for a crowdfunding campaign. And as you can see, they have been able to leverage their initial investment in the book and the awareness that they created to attract more commercial projects like this roof farm in the picture. So as I thought about this and why their campaign was so appealing, and that theme of value and values, I dug a little deeper and I found that others are looking into this too. For example, an organization called the Design Trust for Public Space in New York City has a project called the 5-Borough Farm. And they have analyzed hundreds of urban farms, institutional farms and gardens, community farms and gardens in the New York City area to try to quantify and also qualify the benefits that are associated with these activities. And they created this chart. I know you can't see it very clearly, but the main categories are health, social benefits, economic benefits, and environmental benefits. I said, great, this validates my idea that these things are important to inform not only decision makers, but potential investors in urban agriculture. So how can they be applied to crowdfunding campaigns, I asked myself. So I augmented those values with some of my own observations through time. This is a quick list. They, again, include the ideas of food security and energy infrastructure efficiency and green jobs creation and student training, and also biodiversity that urban farming fosters. And above all, it was the community connection that stood out, because in crowd farming, you're recruiting volunteers, you're recruiting small investors, you're recruiting people who are often more intimately connected to a project than a traditional investment. And due to the follow-up that's created through these campaigns, where the crowd farmers, as I call them, send out updates, it's a very personalized and inspiring way to do investment. Often investors feel a sense of fulfillment and ownership over the projects. So I developed, again, very small print, a compilation of these values and about 12 different case studies of urban agriculture projects that were funded through crowdfunding. And I have steps called starters, farm, and also a planning step. And it runs through three different columns. One where, for example, root need, you identify the challenge that you're trying to solve, like a food desert in a city. And then an example of a project that's doing that and how they did that. And to give you a little bit deeper of a window into that, this is what those three columns look like. And I will be sharing this in the spirit of sharing afterwards, so if you want some more detail, that's readily available. One of the examples that I really liked was one called the Farmery, where it was a shipping container converted into an urban farm that's also a market. So everything's done on one site. And they promote many, many different values, including freshness of mushrooms, for example, which often get wasted in tremendous amounts during the shipping process. Well, if you can sell them right where they're grown, they have the highest nutrient value and the least waste. So I really want to help inspire urban farmers to do crowdfunding campaigns or just get off the ground in general by sharing this model. And to that end, here's my own pitch for a campaign. So, and I call it crowd farming, as you may have observed, and we'll see where that goes. Oh, thank you.